Welcome to this Secret City Arts audio podcast of poems to enjoy and perhaps to listen to again if you'd like to. It's part of Tell It to the Bees, our Secret City Arts project about who and how we remember. Traditionally, people would tell the beehive about births, marriages, deaths, and other important life events. We're gathering some of the different ways that people remember, and we'll be making a hive of story, memory, and poetry, and we'll be sharing it in an online showcase and a printed memory map in May 2021. I'm Mandy Ross from Secret City Arts, and with Synthia Oenga, our young shadow artist, we've been gathering these poems about how we remember times and places and people. We've picked poems from all sorts of sources, some familiar, some less so, some close to home here in Brum, some far away, and all reflecting lots of different traditions. And you might have some favourite poems yourself about remembering. And at the end of this podcast, we'll have some ideas about how you might share them. We don't always start with Shakespeare, but he was a local boy here in the Midlands. The 7 Ages of Man feels like a natural starting point, looking over the different phases of life, or at least men's lives, back in Shakespeare's time. You might have some ideas about how you'd write this differently today, especially the 7 Ages of Women, then and now. The 7 Ages of Man from Shakespeare's As You Like It. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first, the infant mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. And then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow. Then a soldier full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honour, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice in fair round belly, with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again towards childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange, eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion, sun's teeth, sun's eyes, sun's taste, sun's everything.
Next up is a poem by Teresa Paloma Acosta, a Mexican-American writing about the patchwork quilts her mother made. I tend to develop a sentimental attachment to objects, and I love that this poem shows how we can create a bridge between the physical, tangible objects we have in the present and the intangible, how we can reconnect with times long past, and it makes me wonder what objects you might choose that bring back stories and memories from your past. My Mother Pieced Quilts by Teresa Paloma Acosta. They were just meant as covers in winters, as weapons against pounding January winds. But it was just that every morning I awoke to these October-ripened canvases, passed my hand across their cloth faces, and began to wonder how you pieced all these together, these strips of gentle communion cotton and flannel nightgowns, wedding organdies, dime store velvets. How you shaped patterns square and oblong and round, positioned, balanced them, cemented them with your thread, a steel needle. How the thread darted in and out, galloping along the frayed edges, tucking them in as you did us at night. Oh, how you stretched and turned and rearranged your Michigan spring-faded curtain pieces, my father's Santa Fe work shirt, the summer denims, the tweeds of fall. In the evenings, you sat at your canvas, our cracked linoleum floor, the drawing board, me lounging on your arm and you staking out the plan, whether to put the lilac purple of Easter against the red plaid of winter going into spring, whether to mix a yellow with a blue and white and paint the Corpus Christi noon, when my father held your hand, whether to shape a 5-point star from the somber black silk you wore to grandmother's funeral. You were the river current carrying the roaring notes, forming them into pictures of a little boy reclining, a swallow flying. You were the caravan master at the reins, driving your threaded needle artillery across the mosaic cloth bridges, delivering yourself in separate testimonies. Oh, mother, you plunged me sobbing and laughing into our past, into the river crossing at 5, into the spinach fields, into the plain view cotton rows, into tuberculosis wards, into braids and muslin dresses sewn hard and taut to withstand the thrashings of 25 years. Stretched out they lay, armed, ready, shouting, celebrating, knotted with love. The quilts sing on.
Our next poem, I Could Say, is by a Cuban poet. It reminds me of that famous poem that you may know by Thomas Hood that starts, I remember the house where I was born, the little window where the sun came peeping in at morn.
I Could Say by Afro-Cuban poet Jesus Coscauce, born in Santiago de Cuba, translated from the Spanish original to English. Here stood the house. I know these ruins despite the dust. Now only memories and reminiscences of those times remain. I could say with my eyes shut. Here stood the patio where my mother would wash the neighbors' clothes and weep at times with sorrow, with calls. Here the guango shade and the fowl house with its cracked eggs. Here the innocent lamp with no light save hope. Here the corner of the room where Zenaida and I would exchange sweets, songs, and secrets of childhood. Here the room where Grandpa spent that night so solemnly between 4 candles, with the rain pelting the roof and us shifting him around because of the drops falling on the coffin's glass and his face. Here, the rocker by the window where Grandma would tell me this, her simple dream. Cuba is a white horse galloping from the shore to a distant palm grove, and is also a nightingale winging blue through land and wind, a horse galloping between seashells and corals, and an approaching nightingale winging blue. I could say, just as if I were touching the past with my hand, here was the table with hunger always seated, there its stare fixed on the empty plate. I could say so many things, But now we are building another memory, another childhood for the future, and other hands and other eyes to see and touch life.
We're going next to excerpts from Ulysses, a poem by Alfred Lord Tennyson, a Victorian poet. This poem opens with the old King Ulysses stuck at home, as we've been stuck at home through a series of lockdowns. He's looking back and he's reflecting on a long life full of travels and adventure, and he's not done. He's still longing to travel, to explore, to discover the world. And this poem brings back memories for me of my great auntie Esther, who I visited shortly before she died, and she quoted lines from this poem. It was an era when people learned poems off by heart more than they do now, perhaps. She said, "I am a part of all that I have met, yet all experience is an arch wherethrough gleams that untravelled world." And I love that idea that all that we've experienced becomes a part of us and leaves us hungry for more. From Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson. I cannot rest from travel. I will drink life to the lees. All times I have enjoyed greatly, have suffered greatly, both with those that loved me and alone, on shore and when through scudding drifts the rainy Hyades vexed the dim sea. I am become a name for always roaming with a hungry heart. Much have I seen and known, cities of men and manners, climates, councils, governments, myself not least, but honoured of them all, and drunk delight of battle with my peers far on the ringing plains of windy Troy. I am a part of all that I have met, yet all experience is an arch wherethrough gleams that untravelled world whose margin fades forever and forever when I move. How dull it is to pause, to make an end, to rust unburnished, not to shine in use, as though to breathe were life. Life piled on life were all too little, and of one to me little remains. But every hour is saved from that eternal silence. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved heaven and earth, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield.
Next up, a poem by Ugandan poet Okot Bibitek, which offers us a glimpse into traditional gatherings for funeral anniversaries in Uganda. It speaks to me about displacement, the heaviness of being so far away, feeling disconnected from the sounds and sights and sensations of home, but also about the beauty of being able to share and connect with others around us and in our community. Song of Prisoner by Okot Bibitek. Is today not my father's funeral anniversary? My clansmen and clanswomen are gathering in our village. They sit in circles in the shades of granaries. But who will make the welcome speech? Men drink Quete beer, women cook goat meat and make millet bread, but I am not there to distribute the dishes among the elders. The priests throw morsels of chicken meat, they squirt goat blood and pour libations to the assembled ghosts of the dead. But how can I address the ghosts of my fathers from here? My age mates have donned white ostrich feathers. They are singing a war song. I want to join them in the wilderness and chase death away from our village, drive him 1,000 miles beyond the mountains in the west, let him sink down with the setting sun and never rise again. I want to join the funeral dances. I want to tread the earth with a vengeance and shake the bones of my father in his grave.
Here's one I wrote myself after my father-in-law died. He was a capable man, always mending and fixing things around the house. This is about the traces he left behind, and I wonder if it might bring to mind for you other things that someone left behind that might tell part of a story of their life. My Father-in-Law's Remains by Mandy Ross. Small boxes, all sizes of screws, bolts, nails, nuts, washers, cogs, tacks, hooks, a lifetime meticulously saved and sorted in pots, drawers, bags tied with rubber bands, tiny tubs and tubes. Currency for his next repair job, now forever outstanding. All his hours, his jewels, hard purposeful shades of dull silver, zinc, gunmetal blue, warm brass, storm grey lilac, male colours, twill, tweed, or flecked wool. They scattered his ashes in the orchid meadow, but these, his remains, outlive him on the garage shelf, harder than teeth, ancient ores as old as earth, mined and made by men and machines. Pass them down the mail line. His grandson claims them semi-precious. Our last poem is by Rumi, the 13th century Muslim poet, writing in Persian, in translation here, of course. His words speak to us across the centuries as he says, sending news secretly.
The Window by Rumi. Your body is away from me, but there is a window open from my heart to yours. From this window, like the moon, I keep sending news secretly.
We hope you've enjoyed our selection of poems about remembering for Tell It to the Bees. I like the way people find different things in the same poem. Maybe you'd like to share some of your favourite poems with a friend or a neighbour on the phone, or maybe copying one out to send. That's a lovely gift to receive through your letterbox. We'd love to hear your own suggestions of poems that can help you to remember. You can email us to let us know to secretcityarts@gmail.com, or follow us and get in touch by social media on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram @Secret City Arts. We'd like to thank Active Arts Erdington and Birmingham City Council's Culture on Our Doorstep Fund for funding Tell It to the Bees project. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.